All right, hello everyone. Thanks for checking out my video. You're probably wondering why I have Windows XP pulled up right now, and that's a good question. Well, it turns out I had a friend who wanted to upgrade their computer, which was running Windows XP, to Windows 10. I thought, wow, that's quite a jump. If you're really familiar with Windows XP and then you want to move over to Windows 10, that's quite a leap. And especially if they, don't have experience with even Windows 7, let's say. I don't think moving from XP to 7 is that big of a stretch, but if you do remember when that first happened on your machine and you were trying to configure some things, it was a bit of a headache. Well, it's going to be the same scenario moving to Windows 10. Probably less so when you're on Windows 8.1 and you move to 10. That's probably not too terrible, but this is a huge leap. XP to 10, right? So I thought, well, what are the options that we have? Really, there aren't too many. I mean, we're going to wipe the hard drive. We're going to install a fresh copy of Windows 10. However, Windows 10 Professional has built-in virtualization, and that could be very helpful here. If we were able to make a virtual copy of this OS, the way it's installed right now, exactly, and then migrate that into the new operating system and run it as a virtual machine, that might be an interesting way to kind of, transition into Windows 10. This way, you have a virtual machine of your original setup with the Windows XP on it. So that, let's just say, you're pretty familiar with XP and you know where everything is and you know how it works and you want to get something done real quick. Well, really all you'd have to do is boot up that virtual machine, do what you normally would in XP, and get it done. Windows 10 will have its own learning curve, a little bit of a different interface. The look of it's different, so that might hit you in a way that can make this a little challenging. And let's just put it this way, it slows you down. So until you're able to get yourself up to speed, I think that this is a nice alternative, with dealing with learning curve. So that's my video. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you how to take this Windows XP system and create a virtual hard disk of it and then migrate it over to a Windows 10 system. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we need to do is download a program that will help us to create a virtual hard disk image of the entire hard drive as it is right now with the Windows XP operating system installed on it, okay? So open up your favorite web browser, navigate to this page here, and I'll put a link down in the description. We're looking for a program called Disk2VHD. All right, so you click on download here, which I've already done. That will give you a zip file, which you'll need to extract. So once you extract your zip file, you'll have this here, Disk2VHD. So let's double click that folder. And here is our executable, disk2vhd.exe. So double click that. And here's our program. So what this program does is it copies everything on the hard drive and creates one file with a .vhd extension, which stands for virtual hard disk. But there's a couple of options we need to consider before we make this file. And right here in the top right corner, we've got three options. The first one is prepare for use in virtual PC. Yes, we want to make a virtual PC of this operating system. So this is a very important option to select. If you don't select this, you will run the risk of Windows XP freezing during the boot process, okay? And the reason it would freeze is because it is looking for hardware that is no longer connected, and it'll just hang. If you go into a virtual machine, all of the hardware that the operating system is used to seeing by being natively installed directly as it is right now to the motherboard and the graphics card and the network card and everything else that you have attached, all the devices, That will all be replaced by virtual versions. So new motherboard possibly. There's going to be a virtual graphics driver, a virtual network card. All these other devices that you use will be different. And if we don't prepare Windows for that transfer, that migration from physical to virtual, then we may run into issues with booting it up. So definitely do yourself a favor, check that off, and it will help give us a smooth transition. All right, the next option here, use VHDX. That's not the file format we want. I want to do VHD, okay? And you'll see down here where you choose the name of your file. It has the extension .vhd, so we will leave that alone. The third option here, use volume shadow copy. Yes, you do want to have this selected, and the reason for that is because Windows will lock important operating system files, and if those files are locked, chances are they will not be copied, and that is the last thing you want if you're trying to build or boot a virtual machine. If you don't copy those important operating system files, you could run into all kinds of problems. So if we select use volume shadow copy, that enables the access of even the locked files, so we can ensure that those will definitely be copied as well. All right. The last thing to consider are what drives, or what partitions in this case, we will be copying. And in this case, you can see here under the label, I have three. I have a recovery partition, a system reserve partition, and I have the C partition, which is where Windows and all my files are stored, right? The story here, you want to have all of these partitions selected, okay? Everything that pertains to Windows, that definitely includes the recovery, definitely system reserved, and the C, which is where everything is stored anyway, need to be copied. And I know many people would say, well, all I want is the C drive. That's where everything is. That's all that matters. Not in this case, okay? If you want to make a virtual PC, a virtual version of your operating system the way it is, this operating system is already set up to look for the recovery partition. All right, so that needs to be selected. And a lot of the boot information can be stored here on system reserved. So you have to have everything there. All right. It's the same reason why we want to select prepare for use in a virtual PC. That sets up the operating system to anticipate new hardware being present. Well, these three here, if we try to boot a system that all of a sudden doesn't have two of the partitions that it's used to finding and doesn't find them, that may cause it to hang too, and you may not even be able to boot the system, okay? So keep that in mind. Select all of your partitions. Make sure you have prepare for use in virtual PC. Make sure you have use volume shadow copy. Then you're ready to go. Click on create. We're going to have to be patient here. You may have to be more patient than me, because if you have a lot of files, it is going to copy every last file that you have on that drive. It's going to make an entire backup of your drive. And the beauty of it is it becomes one file. It makes it so much easier for you to transfer that one file to an external hard drive, or in my case, I've got a pretty sizable flash drive here, which I'll use to copy this VHD file to here, and then I will load it into my Windows 10 machine once I have this wiped and ready to go. All right, so I'm going to fast forward this, and we'll get moving on the next step. Great, so now that we're done, we're ready to just close this down. So you click the close button here, and it stored the file here in my disk to VHD folder. So you can see I've got a little over 6 GB file, single file. Here's the extension .vhd. Great. So now what we're ready to do is transfer that file over to a flash drive, or one of those external hard drives if you have a larger file, which you probably do. And then we can wipe this system, install Windows 10, and then copy over our VHD file, and then build a virtual machine using that VHD, okay? So I'm going to close this down, and then when I come back, we'll have Windows 10 up, all right? Okay, great. Now we have Windows 10 Professional installed and ready to go. and we are ready to start installing programs, including something that will give us the ability to create a virtual machine utilizing that VHD file that we created earlier of the Windows XP system. So before we start with that, we have to consider a few things about our processor. Number one, is our processor capable of virtualization? Number two, has it been enabled in the BIOS? And number three, does the processor have SLAT technology? What is SLAT, you ask? Well, that stands for Second Level Address Translation. If you want more information, I'll put a link to this page, and it gives you a little bit more detail on what SLAT is. And you'll notice that there are only certain processors that have this technology. So you may or may not have it. It depends on your machine, your processor, and when you purchased it. So you can do a little research yourself if you want, but I think there are easier ways to figure out whether or not you can utilize the Windows version of virtualization. The Windows 10 Professional OS comes with a feature called HyperV, and that feature is not enabled by default. But when you go to enable it, you can basically tell whether or not your machine is able to utilize it or not. So in order to do that, let's go down here to the search bar and type in programs. All right, and you'll see under the settings heading here, it says add or remove programs. All right, click on this. And then over here on the left-hand side, we've got a link to turn Windows features on or off. So click that link, and then you'll see here in the middle, we've got HyperV. Right, this is the virtual machine software that Windows 10 has built in. We just have to select the box here. If you expand this box, you'll see underneath it we've got two folders. The first one here is the Hyper-V management tools. This is the program, the GUI for creating your virtual machine. Right. Underneath of that, though, is basically what gives you the ability to use that software. And you can see on mine here, it's not activated. It's grayed out. And when I hover my mouse, it says Hyper-V cannot be installed. The processor does not have required virtualization capabilities. And that, for me, is no SLAT, unfortunately. So I can't use Hyper-V on this particular machine. But not all hope is lost. This was not for naught, right? There are plenty of other options for virtualization, okay? And one that I like to use is from VMware, and it's called the VM Player. And this is something that you can download for free. So go to this website here. Again, I'll put a link down in the description, and you can select Try It Free, right? So try it free, download the program, all right, and then try it out. I'll show you what it's like when we get rolling here, all right? Once you have VMware Player downloaded and installed on your system, the next thing we have to do is convert our VHD file to a format that VMware Player can use. And in order to do that, we need to download a program called WinImage. So go to this website, and I'll put a link in the description. Click on the download page, and you'll see here at the very top we have, at least as of the date of this video, WinImage 9.0. I recommend downloading the executable. It'll be a little easier to install that way, and install WinImage. After you install WinImage, it will create these icons on your desktop so we can open up WinImage. So double click the WinImage icon. You will see the 30-day evaluation screen. This is only available for free for the first 30 days. After that, you will need to register the program. Click on OK. And here is where we will have the ability to convert our VHD file into a VMDK file, which is what VMware Player needs in order to work. So in order to do that, click on Disk at the top, and then come down here to Convert Virtual Hard Disk Image. All right, it's going to ask you what file do you want to convert, so we are going to navigate to wherever we have our VHD. Mine is on the desktop, so I'll click this and click Open. And now it's going to ask how we want to handle this new file. Do we want to create a fixed size virtual hard disk, or do we want to create a dynamically expanding virtual hard disk? For our purposes, we want a dynamically expanding virtual hard disk. This option will utilize the least amount of space, but it will grow as needed to accommodate the downloading of new files or addition of new files, however you may get them. But it does not block off a certain amount of space within our existing hard drive. And for instance, if you have a 500 gig hard drive, but you maybe only use 200 gigs of that hard drive, a fixed size virtual hard disk will basically allocate the full amount of space, 500 gigs, and allow you to work with that within your VM, just as though you were using it on the old system. However, if you use the dynamic, it will only create a 200 gigabyte size file. And then that file will continue to grow as you use it, which is a much better use of the space that you have on your new Windows 10 operating system. So let's go with dynamic and then click OK. And now it's going to ask me what I want to call this new file. I'm going to call it Padre Goose XP. All right, and then we have down here at the bottom where it says save as type. Right now it's on the default VHD. We don't want that. That's what we're trying to convert from. We need a VMDK. So the second option here is VMware VMDK. Select this option, okay, and the location you want to save it. In this case, I'm just going to put it on the desktop. That's fine. And click Save. Now this will take a few moments. It'll take longer if you have more files. So please be patient, let it complete its process, and when it does, I'll be back to show you how to create a virtual machine using VMware Player. Okay, when WinImage is done converting your VHD file into a VMDK, it will give you this prompt and it'll say, select a partition to connect to. You don't have to do this, but if you want to click the little arrow here, you can see that we have all three partitions as part of that VMDK file, which is great. It's exactly what we were going for, because if you remember from that first step when we created the virtual hard disk file, we wanted to make sure that all of our partitions were included in that. Okay, so we don't need that. We're done with this particular step. We can click cancel here and close WinImage. Now you can see on the desktop here I have my Padre Goose XP VMDK file, and we are ready to create our virtual machine for that hard drive. All right, so let's go down here to the search bar and type in VMware, and that should pull up our player. Okay, great. So we open this up, and this is how it should look. You'll have on the left-hand side is where you'll see the titles of all of the virtual machines that you create. Since we don't have anything, we are going to start fresh with this option over here on the right-hand side, create a new virtual machine. So click on that. And then here it's asking you if you want to use some type of installer, whether it's a CD or an ISO that you have on a flash drive or something like that. This is not something that we need to do because the operating system is already installed on our VMDK file. Okay, so we're going to use, I'll install the operating system later, this bottom option here. So click the little bullet there and click on next. All right, and now it wants to know what type of operating system we have, and that's going to be Microsoft Windows. And on the version here, we are using XP Professional. I don't have the 64-bit version, but this is fine. We'll use that. Click on next. And then here for virtual machine name, what do we want to call it? Well, I'm going to call it Padre Goose XP. And you'll see here in the location that it is going to store it in our documents folder / virtual machines / Padre Goose XP, or whatever you decide to name your virtual machine. Okay. Then when we're done with that, click on next. This step is asking us how big we want to make our virtual hard disk file. This particular file is going to be removed. So I would just say, let's make this 1 gig. And then down here in the bottom where it says store virtual disk as a single file, let's check that off because This will make it easier for us to remove that file because, like I said, this is just going to be created but erased, and we will replace it with this VMDK that we created of our old XP system. Okay, so click on Next here, and here's a summary of the system. You can see the bottom here, we've got our hard disk is at 1 gig, our memory is 512, we got a network adapter hooked up, some CDs, USB printer, all that stuff. Everything looks good here. We'll go ahead and click on Finish. All right, so now what we have to do is connect that hard drive to this virtual machine. Okay, in order to do that, we're going to go down here and click on Edit Virtual Machine Settings. All right, that'll pull up a few more settings here. If you would like to give it more memory, here is where you could do that. Say you want to make this into 1 gigabyte, that's nice. We can do that. Okay, and then if you want to add another processor, if you are used to using it with 2 cores, you could add over here a second core. All right, that's an option. I'm not going to do that because I don't think it's necessary. The hard disk file this is the 1 gigabyte hard disk that we just created. This one we are going to get rid of. Okay, so down here at the bottom, click on Remove. All right, now the hard disk is completely gone. So what we need to do is replace it with something else. That's going to be our VMDK that we made from the original installation. So let's go down to the bottom here to our Windows Explorer, the File Explorer, and then we'll go to our Documents folder, the Virtual Machines folder, and the name of our virtual machine folder here. And you'll see here, this is that 1 gigabyte VMDK file that we had originally. Okay, I'm going to erase or delete that file. Okay, now that's gone. And let's take this is our old XP VMDK, and we'll just drag this file into here. Great. So that's where it needs to be. I can close that. And we can now add that drive on our settings page here back in VMware Player. So at the bottom we have an option, Add. All right, it's going to ask if you want to allow changes to be made. That's okay. Click Yes. That gives it some control over some hardware here. And then now we have at the very top hard disks. All right, so let's highlight that, click on Next. All right, it's asking you what type of interface that is. Is it IDE, SCSI, or SATA? And in this case, I think they're right in recommending the IDE. However, if your computer has SATA hard drives connected, and that is the way it's configured, then you can go ahead and use the SATA option. But for all intents and purposes, IDE is ideal for Windows XP. It's an older operating system. That was probably the technology that was available at the time. So you've got to think about these things, right? So let's leave it at IDE and click on Next. And now it's asking us if we want to create a new virtual disk or use an existing one, use a physical one. Well, we have the VMDK file, right? So we are going to use an existing virtual disk. So that's our second option. Click on Next. And then it's asking us where it is. So we'll click on Browse, and that will automatically put us in the folder for our virtual machine. We already moved this file in, right? So there it is. We can highlight that, click on Open, and now we have just attached, click on Finish here. All right, we've just attached our virtual hard disk to this VM, this virtual machine. One major important question here, convert existing virtual disk to newer format? No, we are going to keep the existing format here, okay? So do not convert this to the new format. Great, now the drive is attached and we are good to go. So let us go ahead, click on OK, and we are ready to boot our virtual machine for the first time. So just go ahead, click on Play Virtual Machine. And I am going to maximize this and put it on full screen mode so that we can get the largest picture. Okay, so here we have a couple of options, right? If you remember, excuse me, all right, when we first made our VHD file, there was an option that we checked off that said prepare for virtual PC. Well, this bootloader that you see is giving us two options. One is the disk to VHD, Microsoft Windows XP Professional, or the one underneath of it, the second option here, Microsoft Windows XP Professional. Now, if I just booted this second one here, that really isn't necessarily prepared for the adjustments that were just made. Keep in mind, this is a virtual machine. Now we have all new hardware attached to this machine. So if we try and boot Windows without sort of alerting it to the fact that something different is happening, we could run into problems. So I'm going to leave this on the default setting here, disk to VHD, and that should make for a nice, clean, smooth install, or not install, but boot up of this virtual machine, okay? So let's see where we go from here. We get our XP logo? Yes, we do. Okay, great. So let this thing load. Probably take a couple minutes. Do be prepared. The first time you boot your virtual machine, it probably will take a little bit longer than usual because it's searching and discovering all of this new hardware that's been attached. You know, it's going to find a new motherboard and a new network card, a new display card, all that stuff, which is configured virtually, but it is different than what it was originally. So please be patient during the boot up process. If yours is just sitting there and the thing is just spinning and spinning and spinning, just give it some time. Check your hard drive light, make sure that it's still flashing, because if it stops flashing or if that little bar freezes, that could be an indication that you have a little bit of a hang up there. You may need to boot into safe mode. So that's something that you'll have to cross that bridge. Oh, look at this. And we have Liftoff. So everything looks to be here. Yep, got my VBS booting up here. Okay, I think we're in good shape. You'll notice in the bottom right corner, it finds new hardware. So you'll get that little bubble that pops up and says, found new hardware, installing drivers for new hardware. That should happen automatically. And you may have to reboot a couple of times if that's the case. Yep, found our new power settings here. So if it does ask you to reboot, you know, give it a minute or two, even after that question pops up, because there could be a couple of other things that are still being discovered and installed in the background. I'm going to make sure that it is, you know, pretty much as ready as it can be, and then. Yeah, see, like this bubble right here is even saying your new hardware is installed, but it might not work properly until you reboot. And then, yep, I got this little saying here. So Windows has finished installing new devices, blah, blah, blah. You want to restart now. Always good to restart after you install a new device. But in this case, I'm going to say no, only because I want to touch upon something that is very important within VMware Player. And this is also the case with VirtualBox and other virtualization software. They all have their own set of tools that allow the display adapter, the mouse, and some of the other devices to operate a little bit more smoothly. Okay, and in order to install those tools in VMware Player, all you have to do is go to the top here where you have your VM Player taskbar and click on where it says Player, or this little arrow here that gives you some additional options. This is where you would attach removable devices like a CD. So if I inserted a CD into my host computer, which is the one that's running Windows 10 right now, then I could connect it to the drive right here. Or if I want to connect this CD to an ISO image that's on my hard drive somewhere, I could do that right here. The other options that we have include the VMware tools, right? So here under Manage, you will have an option to install VMware tools. I highly recommend it. In fact, VMware Player will continue to remind you to do this anyway. Install these tools. This will make your experience that much better. It'll give you better capabilities in terms of what you have with the the display adapter and your mouse. Those are the two things that are going to be the most important, and you will see probably some configuration issues already. If you're having video problems, if you're having a little trouble with the mouse, what have you, install the VMware tools and you will be in good shape. And that's pretty much it. So here we are. We have our Windows 10 system, right? And we also have our old Windows XP system running down here in our VM player. So we are in good shape. You can still access this and do whatever you need to do there, get to your programs that you're familiar with, but then at the same time, while you're ready to learn a little bit more about Windows 10, you can dive in and get your feet wet and experience a whole new Windows. So I hope that you found this helpful and that you continue to tinker like I do. And give me a thumbs up if you like this video. If you have any questions, leave some comments down below, and I'll do my best to try and help you out. So thanks for watching my video. Take care, and God bless.